So if you're dealing with insomnia type issues, in this video I'm going to share some studies that help us understand that acid reflux could be causing your insomnia. Now if you're waking up with heartburn, obviously acid reflux could be creating that insomnia, but for a lot of people they don't know they're having reflux, but it could still be restricting their sleep. They could be dealing with what's called laryngopharyngeal reflux, where they don't really feel heartburn and the acid comes a little further up into that voice box area and can create some trouble. So this is also known as LPR or silent reflux. So let's look at this study here on the association between LPR and insomnia. And they say patients with LPR are more likely to experience insomnia than healthy controls. And the severity of the reflux symptoms was related to the severity of the insomnia. So the worse reflux they were having, the worse they would sleep. And I'm going to put the links to all these studies in the description below this video if you want to dig more into those. But let's also look at this study here on gastroesophageal reflux disease and sleep disorders. And they helped us understand that it was like 79% of people with reflux are having nocturnal reflux, where they're having this reflux at night. And this study also showed that 90% of those reflux events created some type of arousal, where it was either waking them up or pulling them out of a deep state of sleep. So what we want to understand is that the body has what's called this enteric nervous system. And it's basically a bunch of neurons, this network of neurons all through your digestive tract that has the ability to communicate through our vagus nerve to the brain to let us know when there is trouble going on. So this ENS, as it's called, goes all the way up through the esophagus as well. So when acid is coming back up and creating inflammation and creating trouble, the body is going to send a signal to the brain that says, hey, be on high alert. We have trouble going on down here. And this is enough to wake a person up because the body's like, hey, we got kind of an emergency happening. So to get an idea, is this happening with you? Let's look at some of these LPR symptoms that a lot of people don't know have anything to do with reflux at all. So one can be a lot of throat clearing. If you're like, and people are like, what are you doing? Why don't you get out of the car? Why do you got to make so much racket? This is very common with acid coming back up and the body clearing that off of that vocal box to kind of keep it safe. Or some type of globus sensation or a lot of hoarseness. I had this so bad that I lost my voice for 8 years. Not cool. Not a good time. Another issue is chronic cough. I've had a lot of clients come to me with a chronic cough that it ended up being an acid reflux situation. When we fixed the reflux, the chronic cough just went away. Excessive mucus. A lot of times the mucus is just coming up to kind of coat that voice box and protect it. Postnasal drip is a symptom. Dysphagia is when someone's starting to have a hard time swallowing, and this is very common with acid reflux, creating inflammation. Maybe a chronic sore throat, and maybe even like wheezing type symptoms, or choking spells, a bitter taste, or bad breath. A lot of times when people have bad breath, it's not really happening in the mouth, it's things coming back up from our digestive tract. And even dental erosions. All of these can be symptoms that a person is having acid reflux and they might not really know that it's acid reflux. So this study that we were looking at showed that when somebody used a PPI treatment or some type of proton pump inhibitor that turns off the body's ability to produce that stomach acid, when they used a PPI, their sleep would improve because now the enteric nervous system is not sending this alarm of, hey, there's a problem here, all this acid is coming back up and creating inflammation and waking the person up. So they found that they would sleep better, but that sleep improvement was temporary for a lot of people. So what we need to understand is there are other aspects of the digestive process where malfunctions can take place and can also cause insomnia for totally different reasons. So it's likely that the people in the study were showing improvement when the acid wasn't coming back up, but when you turn off stomach acid, you have the ability to create other trouble, like trouble with what we call the serotonin pipeline. So the body uses tryptophan, which is an amino acid, to create serotonin, and then we use serotonin to create melatonin, which is really required to get in that good deep state of sleep. So we'll look at this study here on chronic use of proton pump inhibitors, a potential link to amino acid deficiency, and they showed us that when someone used a proton pump inhibitor for an extended period of time and turned off the body's ability to create that stomach acid so that we can break our food down and get the nutrients out of that food, that they started to see a lot of nutrient deficiencies and especially amino acid deficiencies. We get amino acids from protein that we consume, and we need HCl or stomach acid in the stomach to break those proteins down into elemental nutrients like amino acids. So if someone doesn't have enough stomach acid, they can't access those amino acids, which means they're not going to have enough tryptophan to create this serotonin, and not enough serotonin to create the melatonin that gets us into that good state of sleep. So even though this PPI seemed to be a good temporary fix for those people in the study, when you turn off digestion, you have the ability to create other troubles that can also lead to insomnia. So what's the fix? Well, when we're looking at acid reflux, we're usually looking at a problem with what's called the lower esophageal sphincter here. And it's a little valve that kind of opens so food can come in, and then it's supposed to close so acid doesn't come back up and burn us. So someone could have a problem where they can't really close that LES if they have a hiatal hernia. That can be one possibility. And I'll put a link in the description below this video for our video on how to fix a hiatal hernia if you think that might be a problem for you. But for most people, it's an issue where they don't have enough stomach acid. This LES valve is triggered to close by stomach acid. So if someone just has a really small amount of acid in the stomach, now that small amount is not going to be enough to trigger that valve to close, and the small amount is going to come back up and burn them. So what we see is when people increase their stomach acid, now it becomes acidic enough to trigger that valve to close, and then the reflux stops. So another thing to think about though is that someone is often going to have a bacterial overgrowth with this type of reflux, because the gases that are created from that bacteria, either in the stomach or the small intestine where they really shouldn't be, is kind of pushing everything up, and that gas will create pressure that pushes things back up and pushes that acid back up. So if somebody has a bacterial overgrowth, they really need to take steps to reduce that. Now, if you're new to this channel and you don't know how to do those things, we'll have a link in the description below for our totally free digestion course that kind of walks you through figuring out, like, do I have enough stomach acid? Is there some type of overgrowth there? And other aspects of digestion that may be going wrong, and helps you figure out steps that you can take to improve those situations. But we need to reduce an overgrowth if there's one there, and then most people need to supplement temporarily with what's called betaine HCl capsules. Now, if you're going to supplement with betaine HCl to basically acidify the stomach, if the stomach isn't doing it on its own, you really want to know how to do it the right way. And we'll have a link in the description below for our video on 9 betaine HCl mistakes, because if someone doesn't know what they're doing, they're going to take a little bit and they can really magnify those reflux symptoms. Because if you increase the amount of acid here, but you haven't fixed an overgrowth, or it's not enough acid to trigger that valve to close, well, now more acid is going to come back up and it's going to magnify those symptoms. So we really want to know how to do that the right way. Now, just keep in mind that if your doctor is telling you to take a PPI, don't stop taking it just because I'm showing these studies that show that it can create trouble. Remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. I'm basically a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author, because when I lost my voice for that 8 years, 23 different doctors couldn't figure that out. So I had to dig for my own answers. So now for 20 years, I've taken what I've learned and teach health professionals how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But we'll have the links to these studies below so you can go through those and figure out the right questions to ask your doctor. And just know that there are other issues that can create insomnia as well. If you need to dig into this, you can check out our video, Fix Insomnia for Good, that talks about some imbalances that can create insomnia for some individuals. So check out that totally free digestion course if you need help fixing your acid reflux. But right now, if you want to learn more about the serotonin pipeline failure, along with other digestive malfunctions that have the ability to create insomnia for totally different reasons, you can jump over right now and check out our video on Can't Sleep, Your Gut May Be Failing. Or if you want to learn more about how to use that betaine HCl correctly, you can check out that video on 9 HCl mistakes. I can't wait to hear about your results.